So a human being has levels, strata, right? Freud didn't come up with this. We knew this beforehand. The conscious level begins with what we call machshava. We already talked about machshava. That's the voice going on in your mind. And that's like the interface between your conscious self and your inner soul. That's where you meet it. That's your consciousness. Everybody's trying to understand today what is conscious, what is consciousness. But was dealt with by the Alter Rebbe 200 and something years ago. He said that's level machshava. We have a very unstable connection, so the connection gets unstable once in a while. I don't know if there's something going on in the office with the Wi-Fi.
On the
maybe just the rain, yeah. But we're okay now. We're back again.
No, last time you had your own.
Everything's fine now. But they disappeared for a while.
Didn't you have your own
network?
Yeah.
Last time I was here,
Yeah, we had our own.
Okay, let's get down to this.
Amen.
Now we'll get a better connection. And we won't be muted.
Is there a way to check which network it's on?
What are you trying to find? Which one is it on?
Yeah.
It's on CBT. Is there another one you want to get?
Which one?
Yeah.
That should be good.
Okay, we're good.
Yeah.
A lot of interruptions. Okay, we'll get
so which part are you on?
So we're going to get into now the third part. But let me finish the review. Again, managing the interface in mind over to the heart. So what I wanted to point out, there's layers to the person. What we're not aware of, it doesn't really reach into our machshava, into our thought, into our conscious thought, if you want to call it that, is the emotions themselves.
Mm.
So our thoughts are saying all this stuff, and we try to figure out from that, how am I feeling? We look at what's happening with me, and we say, well, my thoughts are all over the place. I'm sluggish, and so I must be depressed. Or my thoughts are really good. I'm jumping around, so I must be happy. But you're not really aware of what's going on inside yourself until it reaches that level of like words or imagery or something that's happening up there that you can be aware of. It's why like children have a lot of difficulty knowing how they're feeling about something. You have to teach them how to, oh, this is because you're feeling this with it. They don't know about that. It develops with language. As language develops in our mind, and we start being able to hear what's going on in our mind better, we become more aware, more in touch with our emotions. And those people who deny that they have any thoughts in their mind, like that's the 6%, don't hear anything in their mind. Very difficult time dealing with emotions. So you deal with your emotions, you know of your emotions very indirectly. And really what's really going on in your mind and your perception, you deal with very indirectly. So most of us, 99.9% of us, can't go in there and say, I'm going to change the way I feel about this. I'm going to change what I'm attracted to. I'm going to say, no, that emotion is not a good emotion. I'm going to change it. What we can do is we can develop habits that over time, because of our habits, those will start changing our attitude. We can contemplate, think about something for a long enough time that could change our attitude. But we're not really changing what's going on inside. That deeper level. What the tzaddik is he is a kind of person who can say, it's not good to have that emotion. Therefore, I'm not going to have it. It's not good to feel this way about this. So therefore, I'm not going to feel that way about it. But that's way beyond most of us. And that's why we're trying to be a Beinoni and not a tzaddik. So this is key. If you don't know this, you can become very depressed. That's what we were talking about last week. That I messed up and I'm thinking all these things and I'm tempted towards all these things. And after all these years, I still have these temptations. Because you're not a tzaddik. You can't reach inside yourself and do heart surgery on yourself. The tzaddik is a special person who's able to do that. We're not able to.
All tzaddikim?
That's what makes him a tzaddik. That he's able to flood his heart, overwhelm the left side of his heart Whereas the rest of us are dealing with the levushim, the clothing of the soul. He deals with the soul itself. So that's what we say over here in managing the interface. Only the animal's layers of interface, thought, speech, and action of the animal, are not interfacing with the brain. So we say the animal has its thought, speech, and action. Sorry, we're blocking that out. We're disconnecting the thought, speech, and action of the animal soul with the hands and other limbs of the body. How do we do that? It's because God gave the brain control and dominance over the heart. That's what happened. So he's going to phrase in different words what we said about the divine soul shining its light. Now he puts in slightly different terms. He says it's the mind over the heart, because that's where the divine soul principally is in the mind. And therefore it has this dominance. That innate dominance is what renders the divine soul in the brain executive ruler of the small city, so that it can control all the limbs of the body, rendering them as clothing and as a vehicle toward 3 layers of clothing that interface with them, thought, speech, and action, 613 minutes of this rest. So 2 competing souls, competing, which one has control over thought, speech, and action? We're not touching what's going on inside the person, where the emotions are at. Emotions remain, those animalistic emotions remain there, side by side with the divine soul's emotions. But the whole battle now is only on this outer field, the conscious level of the person. And that's where the Beinoni is winning every time. He's retaining, like, who has their hands on the wheel? He has his hands on the wheel. Who has control of the interface? He does. But this backseat driver is still there yelling, so you didn't get rid of him. Those emotions are still there. So he hasn't got inside himself, but he has the external control, the executive control, what actually is going to happen. So I guess it's like having a business where you have shares in the company, but you have majority shares, so you always overrule everybody each time. Well, you just have to keep on putting your foot down, saying, well, no, we're not going to do that. We're doing this. And if you don't like it, get a job elsewhere, that sort of thing. But each time it's a fight. Each time it's a struggle. So that's what he says. Nevertheless, the essence core of this divine soul, so you have the clothing of the soul. The essence core of the divine soul has no executive authority over the essence core of the animal soul and the Beinoni. Still being a wild beast. That can only occur when the love of God comes out openly in your heart. But it can't happen. He says you're not in this struggle all the time. There are times when you can be like a tzaddik. When does that happen? When do you get that sort of permission? You can be like a tzaddik. So he says, at the times of davening and things like davening, it's possible at that time that you'll get yourself inspired enough, and that the animal soul is out of there. So remember what we said, that the tzaddik, basic rule of the tzaddik is he overwhelms the animal soul. And we can't do that overwhelm. But there is a time that we can. That's what we're giving the time of davening for. That's a time that if you really put yourself into it, you could overwhelm the animal soul at a very basic level. Basically, she'll go to sleep. That's a time. Well, that doesn't mean picking up a siddur and during the pages. That's not what it means. It means that you prepare yourself and you think, who am I davening to? Where am I standing? What's going on over here? I'm talking to the creator of the universe. He wants to hear from me. Yeah, he wants to hear from me. Well, maybe he doesn't. Too bad, he does. Okay, are we friends? Well, he's Avinu Shabbat. He's your father. Of course he's interested. Okay, now if you can get yourself to really realize that and focus only on what you are saying, but principally, it's not even so much about what you were saying, but who you're saying it to. And focus on that. You can bring yourself into a state where the animal just goes to sleep. And you're, at that point, simulating the tzaddik.
You're talking about emotions.
Yeah. The emotions can be overwhelmed at that point.
The emotions with the animals.
Yeah.
I mean, other animals. animals.
Yeah. I mean, at first it's going to fight and kick and everything, but eventually the animal says, okay, this is your time, I give up, I'm going to sleep. So
It's
that
not
time,
just the actions, it's the emotions too.
yeah, emotion. That's the time you have to deal with them. It could be a time like, for some people, it's Ne'ilah on Yom Kippur. Or times that you just get very inspired at times. Sometimes things inspire you. And you take that time and you feel it's a special time. That's your tzaddik moment. You have a time to be a tzaddik. And at that point, you might think to yourself, oh, look, I became a tzaddik. No. It's just temporary. Tell you a parable, I think. It says the Baal Shem Tov often went on these journeys where he would tell his Talmidim, get on the wagon, we're going. Often would happen on a Saturday night by Malav Malki. He said, get on the wagon, we're going. He'd get on the wagon, he'd tell them all, he'd tell the wagon driver, turn around, face backwards, let go of the reins. Just hitch the horses and turn around, that's it. And everybody had to either close their eyes or look back or do according to who was telling the story. And then they would start going very fast. And little villages would pass by. And all of a sudden they were somewhere in Germany or France or who knows where. Just like that. Kvitzas Aderech. They just got there. So everybody hears these stories and nobody stops to think, what do the horses feel like? What would it like to be the poor horses are doing this? Like, is this animal cruelty? Do we have to report this to SPCA? What's going on with the horses? So the horses are like this. One horse is called Ivan, and the other one is Stefan, the two horses, right? So Ivan and Stefan, they start going. And Stefan says to Ivan, Stefan, we're going very fast. Yeah, we're going fast. What does that mean? Well, it must be very fast horses. No, Stefano, we can't. Even fast horses can't go this fast. It's boom, boom, another village. We're going super fast. And what are we? We're not horses. Well, if we're not horses, what are we? We must be people. We must be people. People are better than horses. We must be people. And then they get even more excited. And then they're going even faster. And they see like a blur on either side. And Ivan says to Stefan, wait, people can't go this fast. No, people. Then if we're not people, we're not horses, what are we? We must be angels. Angels can go this fast. Wow, we're angels. And then they're really zooming. Everything is gone. They're zooming so fast. We're angels. It's so fast. We're angels. Then they finally get to their destination. They're unhitched from the wagon and they're given their barley to eat and they put their heads in the barley. And Ivan says to the horse, Stefan, I thought we were angels. Angels don't eat barley. Shut up and eat your barley. So, because at these times a person gets inspired and he thinks, I'm a tzaddik. No, you're still a horse. But okay, sorry, it's got in the way. Take the vodka bottle out of the way. Okay. So you can, just because you got inspired for a little bit of time doesn't mean you became a tzaddik. It's still there. And what was happening is all the time, the little beast was inside saying, this davening thing is not for me. I'm going to sleep. You can have this moment. That's it. Yeah. I remember also I heard, all these yeshiva students who escaped during the war from Poland, and they got visas they had to go through China. And Shanghai was an international city, so they could come to Shanghai without a visa.
Sassoons and the...
Yes, so the Sassoons helped them and everything. Anyway, so I heard, so some of them settled in Montreal, and I remember hearing from them the stories.
Kaduris as well.
Yeah, so one of them told me that while they were there was a Chinese circus. They went to see the Chinese circus. In the Chinese circus, the Rosh Yeshiva went with the Bachram and they watched the Chinese circus. In the Chinese circus, they had these trained dogs. And the dogs were jumping through hoops, and the dogs were walking on their back legs, and the dogs were doing all these things that they had hats on, and they had bow ties, and it was very funny, and the dogs were acting like people. And then a cat snuck into the tent, and the dog saw the cat, and they're all chasing after the dog. All of a sudden, they're dogs again, just like that. So when they came back to the yeshiva, the Rosh Yeshiva told them, he says, it's a good lesson to learn. So why? Because soon you're going to go to America. You're going to need this lesson. Because in America, everybody walks around pretending that they're human beings. But in America, there's a little cat. It's green. It's made of paper. And as soon as everybody sees it, they get down on all fours and chase after it. And they're not humans anymore. Okay. Okay, so we're talking about at the time of davening. That's the time that a person has their tzaddik time, and even then, all the divine soul attains is control and dominance. As it says, one nation will rise up against the other. This means when one rises, the other fall, but when the other rises, right? That's the war that's going on. That's the state of all of us. One rises, the other falls. So what happened over here is the divine soul rose, and he has his time, and the animal soul fell. Right? It's not like a journey where you're racing along against the other car. It's when you go up, this one goes down. So it happens very dramatically. But now what's going to happen is after davening, the divine soul, the animal soul is going to come up, and you're going to come out of this, and all of a sudden you're running towards your breakfast, and nothing changed. Like how people run out of shul to the pizza shop right after Yom Kippur, like it never happened.
Pizza.
Huh? Don't pizza after a fast is the worst, but people do it anyways. I heard from the Hatzalah people, I asked them, do you get a lot of calls in Yom Kippur? Yom Kippur, not so much. Motzi Yom Kippur, the night after, that's when everybody gets sick. Okay, so it's supposed to be done in a way that when you're davening, you try to make some sort of resolutions, or you try to talk to your animal soul at that time, convince it that this is good and you should let me do this more often, or we should do this. Try to change. You have to keep your eyes on where you're going next and what life is going to be. Is life going to be any different because of this?
So when you're talking about the animal soul, you're talking about not only action, but action, feelings, emotions, the whole thing.
It's principally the emotions, yeah.
Especially
The character of the person, basically. The whole psyche character of the person.
So it's not thought, speech, and action necessarily.
Well, we said with the Beinoni generally, he's dominating thought, speech, and action at all times. At certain times, he can even dominate emotions.
Okay.
But it's only temporary. And he has to know this is nice for now, but it'll easily reverse itself. Be ready.
And she turns into a tzaddik.
Yeah, we'll get to that and how that could work in the next chapter. If you can become a tzaddik. Or there's another way. We'll find out there's another way besides becoming a tzaddik. So too, the divine soul strengthens herself and dominates over the animal soul. She does so by tapping the primal fount of all strength, which is understanding. Get that? Where does all the strength come from? From understanding. Why does it come from understanding? She contemplates. This is the key, always by the Alter Rebbe. You put your mind in the right place, and you have power. If you contemplate the right things, ponder and contemplate the right things, you empower yourself. So you have to think, what am I contemplating? What am I thinking about? But deeply. So she contemplates, the divine soul contemplates the greatness of God, the infinite, so as to give birth to intense love like coals of fire, the right chamber of your heart. At that point, Sitra Achra in the left chamber is suppressed. That's what's happening at the time of davening. It's suppressed because of where your mind was at. Yet even then, it has not been completely canceled out in the Beinoni. It's not batal. There's no bittul happening here. This is something that only occurs in the tzaddik, whom it says, Libi chalo bekirmi, my heart is empty within me, right? The tzaddik completely is mevatel, he makes bittul, he cancels out the Yetzer Hara in the heart. The tzaddik is revolted by bad and despises it with the ultimate hatred and revulsion. Perhaps not with it, if that's just he's a complete tzaddik. If it's not a complete tzaddik, it's not the ultimate hatred. Okay, but in the Beinoni, the bad, the sitrach, the bad that they're Yetzer Hara, is much like a person who is sleeping and capable of waking up. So he's not bittul. He didn't really overwhelm it. It just went to sleep. At any moment, it could wake up. As long as his mind is focused there and he's into it, the animal is asleep. So too, while the Beinoni is focused on reading the Shema and on prayer, the bad in the Beinoni is as though it were asleep in the left chamber. For the time being, the heart burns with love of God, but afterwards, that can bounce back and wake up. By a tzaddik, that's not going to happen. It's bottled already by the Beinoni. Now this explains, remember in chapter 1, when Rabbi was explaining to his students that what's the difference between a tzaddik, a rosh, and a Beinoni, he said, for example, I'm a Beinoni. And his student Rabbi said to him, well, how can you be a Beinoni? If you're a Beinoni, Rabbi said, if you're a Beinoni, then all of us are completely wicked. You know, you're obviously the tzaddik, because there's got to be a tzaddik. If there's any tzaddik around, it must be you. But he considered himself a Beinoni, which means that it's impossible to look at yourself and determine whether you're a Beinoni or a tzaddik. There's no metric for it. There's no measure that you can measure a person. Oh, we measure this person. We see he's not a tzaddik yet. He's a Beinoni. Can't tell. He's certainly not by behavior. So why? After davening, he's back to being a Beinoni again. You can see that. Or a person can see, well, where are my emotions? Am I getting temptations? If I still have temptations, I'm a Beinoni. If I never have any temptations anymore, I never have those emotions, I must be a tzaddik, right? So no. Because you could be a Beinoni who's like in that state, that davening state the entire day long. You're just riding on this constant inspiration all the time. And that's overwhelming. The beast just stays asleep all the time, but you never actually had any effect on it. You're just sustained inspiration all the time, that's all.
If you're governing, you're suppressing your animal soul. So it's your divine soul that's predominating. Aren't you tzaddik then and not a Beinoni?
So that's the whole crux of the issue. What's happening? What's the difference between being in this constant state of inspiration, and therefore the animal doesn't have a chance, it just stays asleep? What's the difference between that and saying, well, I overwhelmed it and it's gone? Effectively, in both states, it's not active. That's the difficult issue over here. So what's the difference between Rabbah and the tzaddik? And which is why he could figure he's a Beinoni. So he says, through his mouth never ceased from reciting words of Torah. His only desire was in Torah day and night. And he did it with desire, with yearning, and with passion, with the longing of his soul that yearns for God with great love, just like the love at the time of reading Shema and prayer. So he's a tzaddik, right? Nevertheless, he only saw himself as a Beinoni who in a perpetual state of prayer. He figured I'm just constantly davening. Like the Chachamim, so the rabbi said, Halavai, Shispal Adam Kol Hayom. He said, if only a person could be davening the entire day. When I mean davening the entire day, that's all he should be doing. He has to eat, he has to do, davening the entire day. So it means that you should be in that state of davening the whole day. So, what you're asking, Mary's asking, what's the difference between that and the tzaddik? How do you differentiate between the two? Between one that's asleep and could wake up at any moment, and one that's just gone. But
One can sleep and
one is asleep, and the other one is just bata. So the only way you would know is if he stopped for a little bit. And we recall, and you do these studies, whatever sort of studies, say we're studying this drug or this therapy or something. So, but you need something to compare it to. So you might get a control group, but you might also do something called reversal.
Some blindness.
Well, you could do reversal. Reversal means, well, it's been working well for the last 6 months, but maybe that's not due to our intervention. It could be due to something else. So let's stop the intervention and see what happens. And if everything crashes, wow, this looks like the intervention was good. But if everything just stays the same, then you're in doubt. Maybe it had nothing to do with our intervention. Maybe it would have happened anyways. So that's one way of going about it. But then you would have to ask them, nobody wants to do that. Why should I stop being in this state now to test out whether I'm a tzaddik or not? The other issue is, can he become a tzaddik gomer, a complete tzaddik? The Beinoni, who's like he's davening the whole day, he's not on the road to there because he hasn't stripped the animal soul of anything. He hasn't stripped anything away from it. It's still basically into all those things. But it's just sleeping. Whereas the tzaddik, he's been stripping away all of that, so until the animal really has no attachment to any of that. And when he can strip it to the point that there's zero attachment at all, then he can flip that Yetzer Hara over into a Yetzer Tov. And then it should be recognizable that some great transformation happened over here. That's a completely different state, to have two Yetzer Tovs. So maybe, but maybe not, because you would think the Rabbah is a complete tzaddik. So, and he couldn't recognize it. The Alter Rebbe himself said about himself, for example, I'm a Beinoni. The previous Rebbe also said about himself, for example, I'm a Beinoni. So how can you know?
Did the Rebbe say?
What did the Rebbe say? I told that story last week about the doctor. Did I tell last week the doctor who wanted the Rebbe's Olam Haba? I tell that
The
story?
doctor who what?
The doctor who wanted the Rebbe's share in the world to come. I told that story?
I don't remember.
No, you don't remember it? Okay, good. I like to tell it.
You told it.
There was a wonderful, great chassid, Rabbi Dvorkin. Is a very special person, very special chassid. And he managed to get out of Russia in 1940, after the war. And he managed to get to America 1947. And the previous Rebbe was very close with him and asked him just sit there in the base of Medrash with the Bochum. He just wanted the Bochum should see him. And he would talk with the Bochum and learn his. And then 2 years later, he passed on. So it was 11:30 in the morning on a Thursday morning, and that night was Shavuos. And Rabbi Groner was assisting the Rebbe, who was then the Rebbe's son-in-law. But he ran a lot of things, he had a lot of responsibilities. So I didn't want to tell the previous Rebbe what had happened, because his health was frail, wasn't a good idea. So Rabbi Groner came and told the Rebbe, the son-in-law, what had happened. So first thing, right away, the Rebbe burst into tears, to the point that his wife, the Rebbetzin, who was the daughter of the Rebbe, thought, what happened? She said, such tears must be that her father passed on. No, they told her it was the Rebbe Dvorkin. So then the Rebbe stopped and said, wait, we don't have much time over here. We got to make a levaya. He's got to get buried before Yom Tov. First of all, it's a mitzvah of the Torah, lo samlin. You're not supposed to leave the corpse over, even for just buried that same day. And even extenuating circumstances, okay, the extenuating circumstances, and we can't, but it says in the Gemara that if a person passes away, it gets buried on Erev Shabbos, like right before Shabbos, Siman Tov Hulo. It's a good sign. Like he'll get it, that means he's going to a good place. So Rebbe figured we got to get him buried right away. So, but we got to it needs to be a death certificate. They're not going to release the body without a death certificate. So who's going to sign? He needs a doctor. The law in New York, the doctor has to, you have to either an attending doctor or a doctor who has known you for 2 years. Well, the attending doctor was Dr. Zellickson, and he had only come to America 6 months before. Well, he got his certification only 6 months before. That's no good. He has to be 2 years. Okay. If we leave this up to the health authorities, the hospital and so on, it could take a week. Who knows how long with them? What are you going to do? So the Rebbe says, call Dr. Nass. There was a doctor, Israel Baruch Nass. His English name was Raul. Is that a Spanish name? Raul?
Could be.
Raul Nass. So he was close with Dr. Zellickson, and he wrote a book on Kabbalah, and he was a Rav as well, but he was a doctor. He used to argue with Dr. Zellickson in matters of halakha and medicine and so on. So call Dr. Nass. So I called Dr. Nass and explained to him the deal, what needs to be done. So he's thinking, the Rebbe wants me to sign this document, but I was not there at the time. This is very dangerous. I have my medical license, This is could be considered a misdemeanor and worse. And the insurance companies could come after me as well. This is not safe. Who on earth would do this? So he tells Rabbi Groner, he says to Rabbi Groner on the phone, I have to speak directly to the Rebbe. So he gets the Rebbe. He means the son-in-law. He would say the Ramami or Ramash, whatever he would say. So he gets, I need to speak to the son-in-law. Okay, so the Rebbe gets on the phone. The doctor explains to him, this is what you're asking me to do. But I could do it. I could get it done, but I have a request. Okay, what's the request? I want your share of the world to come. Give me your world to come, and I'll do it. Without a beat, without missing a beat, the Rebbe said, if I have a share in the world to come, I hereby bequeath half of it to you. And Reb Michal Dvorkin was buried that afternoon.
Wow.
Why did the Rebbe want him buried that afternoon? Because it was a good simon that he'd get a good place in the world to come, right? Yeah. So he's giving up. If I have, I'll give half to you. So.
A chutzpah, the doctor.
That's interesting. For the doctor, that was everything. That was everything. You get a share in the world to come. For the Rebbe, everything's to do a favor for another Jew. I can help out another Jew. World to come. You'd probably be ready to give up his entire share of the world to come just to do a favor for another Jew. That's the point. Now, I have to tell you, I was thinking about this today, that the Rebbe always spoke about the Mesiris Nefesh, the self-sacrifice of his L'chaim. That his father-in-law, previous Rebbe, it's that self-sacrifice. He sat in prison 7 times. And the last time was a certain death sentence that miraculously he got out of.
Yeah.
And as soon as and he knew this was going to happen, continued doing what he was doing no matter what. And as soon as he got to out of Russia, to Riga and Poland, just continued constantly putting himself in danger. And as soon as he came to America, shifted everything, put himself 100%, even though the doctors told him he had to rest at one point. And he writes in a letter, I've been resting for 3 hours already. How long can this go on for? Okay. And he put everything on the line over and over again. So the Rebbe comes talking about self-sacrifice, this Mesiris Nefesh. The Rebbe he wasn't a jail sitter. The Rebbe himself wasn't doing that. So I was thinking to myself, How did the Rebbe, what self-sacrifice, what was the Rebbe's Mesiras Nefesh? I'll tell you what it is. Everybody who had a private audience with the Rebbe tells you the same thing. The one I heard it best from, though, was Braventer, Rabbi Braventer. Made a yeshiva that many of my friends went to. The Rebbe told him to make it. He described it like this. He says, it was the first and only time in my life that I'm sitting at the desk with somebody, and there's nothing there on his desk except for a Sefer Torah. There's nothing else in the world concerning him except me. There's nothing else on his mind. There's no other phone calls that he's answering. No other business. All that concerns him right now is me. That's it. Total 100% focus. And same with the next person, and the next person, and the next person. With some of these people, the Rebbe would sit and cry with them. Literally, tears. Many tears. But the next person, each person, this can go on an entire night. And each person felt that for the Rebbe, he was the only person who exists in the world. Now, hold on. There was a Rosh Yeshiva of the Yeshiva in Paris in Benoit. So he was a great Rosh Yeshiva, but the Rebbe had a problem with him. He said to him, why don't you take more time to talk with the Bachur? Your students, you're too cold, you're too distant from them. So his name was, the Rosh Yeshiva, his name was Hillel Pevsner. He said, Rebbe, I'm an introvert by nature. It's not my nature to go socializing. I'm not that kind of person. So the Rebbe said, I'm also by nature, the Rebbe called himself an ichnik. An ichnik, ich is I, an ichnik. That's what he called an introvert, an ichnik. I'm so centered around myself. Every time he says, I deal with another person, it's Mesiras Nefesh all over again. It's a whole new self-sacrifice each time. So, because I'm not that type of person. So that was his Mesiras Nefesh, to sit there and listen to another person's problem and be totally, totally absorbed with what's going on with this person. Nothing else concerns. Now that's a tzaddik. It's a tzaddik. Okay, so back to the question. The question we have to deal with is whether, what essentially is the difference? Because we say, L'may nafka. What difference does it make if he's a Beinoni or tzaddik? What difference is it? So I said one difference is, could he make it to become a complete tzaddik? The Beinoni's not on that way at all, because he hasn't actually affected the beast. The other difference it makes is that the Beinoni who's in this tzaddik mode all the time has to know, I let go of the reins a little bit and everything, so I still got to keep myself away from temptation. And I have to keep on doing what I'm doing all the time, because I don't know. So he has to know that, because the beast is just sleeping, could wake up any moment. So as far as our observation and our measurement, we can't know. But as far as what's actually happening inside, we know there is a difference. But you could not tell the difference if this is a tzaddik or this is a Beinoni by looking at this far, unless it's a complete tzaddik, maybe. But the essential difference, you understand? Besides between something that's just being suppressed and something that's been annulled. The difference between the Yetzer Hara that's being suppressed, just being overwhelmed by the moment constantly, or a Yetzer Hara that actually has been affected and it's been how do you say
Controlled.
it's been canceled to some degree.
Yeah, I think so, yes.
Maybe not 100%, but canceled to a degree.
Controlled.
Yeah.
No, it's more control. The Beinoni controls it, but the tzaddik doesn't have it anymore.
Yeah. It's not controlled. It's basically dead.
So cancel.
Yeah, it's not completely dead, because if it were completely gone, he could become a complete tzaddik. He could then turn that whole drive around. But it's effectively eliminated. Whereas by the Beinoni, I'll tell you the difference. You have things, types of bittul, where something falls into something else, but it's ineffective at that point. Not when you need like 1 part in 60 for it to be totally, it's not giving any taste because it's 1 part in 60. But then you have other cases where it's not 1 in 60, but it's still, it's not dominant at all. The main thing is something else. So, for example, when it comes to making a bracha on something, you want to know, is this a shahakol or is this a mezona? So what type of bracha do I make on it? So, well, it's mainly vegetables, a little bit of something else mixed in. Make a very piyadama, because that's what's dominant over here. It's mainly eggs with a little bit of vegetable mixed in. Oh, so it's eggs. It's mainly eggs. Yeah, I can taste the vegetable, but it's mainly eggs. So that's shahakol. I think that's something like the difference. The Beinoni, what is he? Right now, at this time, because of the state he's in, he's mainly his divine soul. But the HR is still there. It's just his divine soul is dominating. Very dominant this time. All the time. It's dominating, but it hasn't really been mavata, annulled this thing. Anyway, it is a subtle, nuanced difference, distinction. Okay, and now the relative truth. This is
That seems to be a contradiction.
relative truth. Oh, it would seem to be a contradiction, but it's not.
Truth is absolute.
Truth is absolute. There's truth that's absolute, and there's relative truth. So, and that's what he has to deal with over here. Is the Beinoni lying to himself? Is his love false? He says he loves God, and he nevertheless has temptation for evil. What kind of love is that? Either you love God or you love evil. What is it you love? Make up your mind. Obviously, you don't love. Right? What is truth? The way truth is spelled is very telling. Like in Hebrew words, the letters themselves have meaning. Truth starts with an aleph and ends with a taf. And the middle letter is the mem, which is from the mid. So it runs from beginning to end. That's truth. It runs from beginning to end. You do an experiment in your laboratory, and these were the results. How do I know this is true? I found if you mix this with this, you get this. But maybe it's not really true. Maybe it's just in this instance it happened. So I write up a paper describing exactly what I did with exactly. And then somebody else in Belgium does it, and somebody else in China does it, and somebody else in Africa does it, and they all get the same results. All try at a different time of year, every time we get the same results. Oh, now I know it's true. Right? You make an experiment, does this sociological system work? Well, we try it in an agrarian society, we try it in a nomadic society, we try it in a civilization, we try it in different times in different places, and it works everywhere. It's called the Jewish people. So therefore, it's truth. It works everywhere. So truth is something that goes from beginning to end. Now, a Beinoni hearing that thinks that I'm a liar, I'm fake. Because sometimes I'm feeling like this, and sometimes I'm feeling like that. So my love is fake love. So Alter Rebbe says, no, don't worry about it. There's truth and there's truth. There's relative truth. You have your truth, but not the way you think. Now, concerning this quality of love that we speak about when discussing Beinonim at the time of the prayer, through the dominance of the divine soul, and relative to the level of tzaddikim, those who serve God with absolute truth, this kind of love can't be called true service at all. After all, it vanishes after the experience of prayer is ended. As soon as they finish davening, they're like, what was that all about? They're all back to the same old thing. I didn't change. What's going on? It says, truthful speech lasts forever, but a false tongue lasts for only a moment. So if that's the measure of falseness, it doesn't last long. Okay? That's kind of disappointing, says no. Nevertheless, relative to the level of Beinonim, this is called a complete and whole form of service in absolute truth for them, for each person according to his or her stage on the level of Beinoni. So it is truth. For you, where you're at, this is true. So we can legitimately also call the love that they experience in their state of prayer true speech that lasts forever. Why? It's because their divine soul is always capable of returning and reawakening that kind of love whenever she will intensify her efforts at the time of prayer and davening. Every day through the preparation is appropriate to reach all. So you can always come back there again. As long as you say, yeah, I could always be back there again, and it's still for real. But I left it. Yeah. It's like, that's your home. Where, I asked, where do you live? I live at 175. Well, you're not there right now. Yeah, but when I leave, I'm going to go back there, so it's still my home. Remember when my oldest daughter was just a few years old, and we had a guest visiting from Israel, and the type of Israeli guests that start talking to you, and it's their mission that how can a Jew live outside of Israel? You all have to live in Israel. How can you have a home outside of Israel? Those type of guests. So we're walking along, coming back from shul, and he's saying this to me. So I turned to my little daughter, I don't know how old she was, and I said, Shifra, where is our home? And she pointed, it's that way. I said, no, our real home. Our real home is in Eretz Yisrael. And the guy shut up after that. Nothing more to say. So that's the Benini's home. He only experiences this once in a while. Maybe he only experiences it once a year in Yom Kippur. But he feels that's who I really am. So therefore it's true. I am not being that now. Yeah, but I'm not being who I really am. This is who I really am. So that's true. As long as you know that you own this enough that, yeah, I could be there, I could come back to that again. So now I'm not acting that way. I'm walking around the universe thinking as though it's my own place, as though I built this place. Yeah, but I know I'm fooling myself. At any moment I could go back there and say, Avinu Avarachama, and I'm back. Not in the moment, it'd take you some work, but you could get back in there again. You could always come back home. So that's still true. And this is says about truth, philosophically about truth, a very important thing. This is because the quality of truth is the quality of Yaakov. Right? We say Chesed Avram and Pachad Yitzhak and Gvurah Yitzhak, but Emes LeYaakov. And Emes LeYaakov. Yaakov is Emes. He's the third one. It's called the center rod that runs from end to end. In the Mishkan, you had a rod in the middle that ran from one side to the other all the way through. Truth runs from the highest level and steps to the very bottom step. On each level and step, it runs through the midpoint, the point of that level is truth. So now, it's telling you a different way of understanding how it means that truth goes through and through. It means that when truth goes through and through, it doesn't mean that to be true, you have to go from one end to the other. It means that in every level, you can find the truth of that place. So in one world, this is true. But if in a higher world, that's not called truth. We're in a higher truth here. Yeah, that's not truth. No, when you're in this world at this level, this is truth. And because in every level, at every person, that's a truth. We talked about it when in chapter 5, I talked about when a little child is learning the story of Yaakov and Esau. And he imagines how he imagines this hairy kid. And then he grows up and he finds, nah, that was silly. That was for a 4-year-old understands. Now I'm bigger. I understand. And then he gets older and he says, oh, that's how children understand. And eventually becomes a big Kabbalist and he says, oh, the real Kabbalistic idea. Or even a child learns the story of the Yetzias Mitzrayim, the Malchus, the plagues in Egypt. And it says that God struck the Egyptians with his mighty hand. And he's a little kid, so he sees a big hand coming out of the sky and whacking the Egyptians. And then he grows up a little more. I got a hand. It doesn't have a hand. It meant like this. I was so silly when I was a child. No, when you were a child, for the child, that is truth. Absolute truth. For you're 10 years old. You're not such a little child anymore. That's not truth. But for the child, that is truth. In the child's world, that is it. For the child's world, it's absolute truth. Relative to the 10-year-old, it's not really true. But it is truth there, because that's what truth is. Truth can exist on each level according to that level. This is a completely different way now of understanding what it means that truth goes from one end to another. And truth is an endless domain. There's no measure of how high truth reaches all the way up until the apogee of absolute truth. All levels and steps below where is nothing relative to this step, like we said. That's not truth when you get to the next step. And that's not truth contained in the next step. And that's as is known who know the esoteric knowledge, that which is considered the head and brains of the lower levels lies beneath that which is considered the heels and feet of the levels beyond them. Statement of rabbis, the feet of the angelic beings are equal to all of them. That's how it works. That's how the steps work up and up. The truth at each level, that is truth at that particular level. Okay, there's a mincha marav happening in the shul, and there's a farbrengen. Rabbi Yisrael Darren from Stamford, Connecticut. It's been a shliach there for many years.
Oh, that's why.
That's why he was here. It's his brother-in-law.
Of course,
It was his brother-in-law. So you're invited. Don't come and listen. I'm going to go from
His other sister.
Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Married to Darren.
And we'll be back in a few weeks when I get back from Eretz Hakedesh. Thank you for being here. We'll let you know.
Yes, Koch.